to answer this poll, we would appreciate it. Once everyone has had a second to answer the poll, I'll share the results with you. If you would mind taking a few more seconds to answer it. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results with you. As you can see, the vast majority, a little bit over 60%, are either a little bit familiar with SSRS or somewhat familiar. And then we've got about 28% who are very familiar and 9% who are not familiar at all. So we've got a pretty mixed group right now. I think the vast majority of you are at least a little familiar with SSRS. So this will be a great session. Mike, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter.
Yep, I'm ready.
All right, everyone. Have a great session.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. So as Rachel said, we're going to be covering parameters in reporting services 2008 and R2 today. And we're going to go through some of the items that you can do in there. So first, a couple things about myself. My name is Mike Davis, and I am a business intelligence consultant here, a senior business intelligence consultant with Pragmatic Works, and also an author and certified in business intelligence. Got a couple of books out, one on integration services. So if you're looking to learn IS, that's a good one. Comes with a DVD, teaches all of the major transforms and tasks inside of SSIS. And a new one just came out, Business Intelligence Trainer, and it covers everything from IS, AS, RS, reporting services, Power Pivot, and SharePoint. And again, comes with a DVD, so it's a good little trainer there to get yourself started in business intelligence to understand the whole stack there. Okay, enough of the boring stuff. Now about what you're here for. So we're going to talk about parameters today. We're going to talk about query parameters, and we're going to put some available and default values in there, and we're going to do some drill throughs. We're also going to do some custom code also. We'll do some parameters that are cascading, and if we have time, we'll squeeze in a couple of extra things too. So. Any questions you have, please put those in the question room, and we'll take those questions. I think, Rachel, I think we're going to take those at the end, correct? And Rachel, maybe on mute.
All right, yep, so, that sounds great. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah, that doesn't take up.
Okay, so a couple things you're going to get from this session. One, you're going to learn about reporting services and about the parameters, and two, you're going to get some really bad jokes in here. I am not a comedian, but unfortunately, I try to be one, so you guys will have to deal with the really bad jokes. So speaking of drill throughs, my last trip to the dentist was really bad. So there we go. All right, it's only going to get worse from there. All right, so let's talk about query parameters and available and default values and drill throughs, just to get you started here. So I'm going to open up the bids. So this is using 2008 R2. Most everything I'm going to show you here is going to work in 2008 or 2008 R2. So I think, actually, to tell you the truth, most of this will work in 2005 also, a lot of these features. If anything's different, I will try to point those out. Okay, so I've got a few reports here that I've created, and let me open up just this one named query here. It's just a simple report. There is no parameter on the report at this time, as you can see, nothing in my parameter folder here. And let's go ahead and preview this report. And this gives me a list of all my addresses that are inside of AdventureWorks. I know we're all tired of looking at AdventureWorks, but the data here is not really important. The important part is the parameters. So, all right, so I want to put a parameter on this report, and I want to do it built into the query itself here. To do it in the query, it's really simple to do. I'm going to go ahead and go to my data set properties here, and right here in the bottom, I have my where clause, where the state is in the U.S. I'm going to add something else to my where clause here right below it. It's going to give me a parameter on my report. And in fact, I've cheated it a little bit, and I have it right below here. I'll just bring it up so you guys can see it. And there it is right there. So I'm just adding an and then the city is in at city. And city is one of my columns on my report here. Now I'm using in, and then I put in the at city, and I put parentheses around that. You have to have parentheses around it for the in to work. You can do equal to @city instead. The reason I do in is because if I decide to change this to a multi-value parameter, then I'm already set, ready to go. You don't get any kind of performance loss from doing this, so this works great for doing the in. This just checks that one city that comes back. If you have multiple cities, then it looks at multiple ones. So I'm going to go ahead and use in and then @city there, just in case I decide to change it to a multi-value parameter in the future. And I'm going to click on OK. And when I do that, you'll see that it creates a parameter for me automatically on my report. And that's all it is to it. We can go to preview now, and there's my little box I can type in the city. So if I type in Orlando in there and run this, I'll get some cities back. But what if my user is not the best speller in the world and they don't know how to spell Orlando and they type in the word wrong? Of course, they're going to get no results back. So wouldn't it be nice to have a drop-down box there with a list of all the cities that you want? And you can do that. We're going to need another query to make that happen, though. So I'm going to right-click on Datasets and click on Add Dataset. And I'm not going to use a shared dataset. We're not going to be covering those in this session. I do a session on administration that covers shared datasets and report parts. But for right now, I'm just going to embed this. So, and I'm going to call this city and param. And you may want to call it city available values or something like that. Just something so you know that it's being used for your parameter. And I need a query now to give me a list of all my cities. And I have that query right over here in my folder saved. And I'm just going to open that up and copy it out and paste it over into my query. So one of the important things here is you want to have a distinct on this, and you want to have an order by on it. So in the drop-down menu, I just want to see each city one time. If I don't do a distinct, then I would see Orlando, 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 Orlando for each row that exists in my database. So I don't want to see that, of course, so I'm using select distinct. And then, of course, in order by clause, I want to see my cities in alphabetical order. I'll make it nice and neat for my end users so they can find the cities they want very easily. Let's hit OK. And now I'm going to open up my city parameter here. I'm going to click on Available Values. And you can actually specify values. So I can click on Specify Values and hit Add. And I could type in information here. I could type in Orlando if I wanted to here. Of course, that doesn't make much sense to do that because if I get new cities in my database, and I would have to come in here and manually add those. So we're going to check the option that says Get Values from a Query. And I'm going to select my city parameter here. My value is going to be city, and my label is going to be city. Now there's a label field and a value field here. The value is what's passed into the actual parameter, or into the query, and the label is what the end user sees. Now I don't have a city ID column, so this is just going to be city and city for both of these. But if maybe you had a drop-down list with, say, some products, then you would show the product name to the end user, so the label would be product name, but the value would be, say, product ID or something like that. You want to use IDs or integers for your values as much as possible to speed up your querying. And the other option here is default values. Now in this case here, I could do a query. I could say, give me top 1 or something like that, if I wanted to get the some city there. But I'm going to go ahead and specify a value here, and we'll hit Add. And I'm going to type in Orlando. And make sure I spell it correctly there. And we're going to click on OK. And when I preview this report now, it should default to Orlando, and it should have a drop-down menu of all the cities. So let's preview this. There we go. Orlando is automatically in there. I didn't have to do anything. And in my drop-down menu here, there's a list of all my cities. So I can select which city I want. If I select another one here and hit View Report, I'll see all of the values from that city. All right, so that is available in default values. All right, let's talk about drill through now. So I have a list of all these cities here. Drilling through to another report is a very common thing that people like to do. So if I'm looking at the details here, I want to see something specific. So I have another report here I'm going to open. Let's say that this report here is my detailed report, showing me the addresses and cities and states. But I want to see an overview report, just a list of cities, and I want to be able to click on the specific city and drill down to this report. So let's go do that. I'm going to open up another report I have here called Cities Drill Down. And this could have other information on it. I've just got a list of cities here, but you can imagine maybe this has got a total here of sales or something like that. So this is kind of a higher level overview of these cities. It's not going to be a detailed report of each city. And I want to be able to click on one of these cities here and drill down and see the details of the city. So let's go to Design here. I'm going to right-click on this text box, go to Text Box Properties, and click on Action. And I already have the action on here, so let's set that to none so you can watch me build it from scratch. Let's go to Action here. All right. So a couple of actions. You have a Go to Report, which will take you to a separate report. It has to be a report that's in this project, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. Bookmark would be another location on this report, and then you can also have Go to URL. Go to URL works great if you've got, like, say, an address and you want to be able to click on that and pass it into Bing Maps or something like that, and have the website come up with that address on it. Or maybe you have the ISBN for a book, and you click on that and you pass it into Amazon, you get that book back. But today we're going to cover going to reports using drill downs. So I'm going to click on the drop-down menu here. Those are all of my reports that I have in this project. And I'm going to select, let's see, I think it was Query was the name of it. That was the one we were using a second ago. And I'm going to click on Add, click on my drop-down menu, and this is going to give me a list of all the parameters that exist on that query report. Now, I've only got one parameter on there, named City, so that's all I'm seeing here. If you have multiple parameters, they would all show under this list here. And if you have multiple parameters, you need to have those values either, one, mapped here with some sort of value coming from this report, or two, you need to have default values on them on that detailed report. So I'm going to go ahead and select City here. And what value do I want to pass into that? I want to pass in the city value, which is the only field I have. If you click on the effects box next to this, you'll see that you can go to data sets here, and I could select some other field here if I had other fields. I've only got one field, city, but if I had other cities here or other values for my columns here, I could select another column and pass in state or zip code or something like that if I wanted to. We're going to pick just city here. That's all we need. And we'll click on OK. Let's preview the report. And now if I click on one of these cities, I'll click on Atlanta here. There's my detailed report, and it puts in Atlanta in that box. Now when you do a drill through like this, you'll see that you get this little blue arrow that appears right there. And that little blue arrow is giving me the chance to go back to the parent report. And if I put my mouse over that, you'll see that's exactly what it says, back to parent report. So I can go back to my parent report now, and I click on a different city, say Baldwin Park, and there's Baldwin Park. And I'm seeing the details of that. If you go back to Design View, and then you go back to Preview, in 2008, it would go back to that child report. And so in Design, you'd see one report, but in Preview, you'd see a different report. They fixed that now in R2, and now it actually takes you back to the parent report. In 2005, it did that also. So a nice new feature of R2 there. A little cleanup. All right, so let's go on to the next one here. See, query parameters we covered, available and default values we covered, and drill throughs there, and my dental visit. All right, next section. So let's talk about multi-value parameters. So if you want to be able to select more than one option from your parameter list, you can do that. I'll show you how to do that. There's some extra things you have to do, though, if you're bringing them from a stored procedure, a SPROC. You have to use a split function, which I'm going to show you how to do. And there's actually a copy of that function on my blog, which I'll show you. And then we also want to set up cascading parameters. So if I want one parameter to feed the value for the next parameter, we can do that with cascading parameters. Speaking of cascading, I have this beautiful cascading waterfall behind my house, and I went to go take a picture the other day, and this cat jumped right in the middle of the picture and ruined the picture. And that's what came out of the picture. So, all right. All right, let's move on. All right, close this up here. And let's go back to my query. All right, so multi-values from a query, very easy. This is the same report we were just looking at now. I'm simply going to open up my city parameter here, and there's an option for multi-value right here. Allow multiple values. Now you can also allow null values and blank values to be passed in, so if someone selects a blank option out of the drop-down menu, you can allow that to be passed in. By default, those are not allowed. I'm going to go ahead and check Allow Multi-Values. We're going to click on OK. I'm going to click on Preview. And now in my drop-down menu, I have little check boxes next to my cities. So I can select two cities here and hit View Report. And now I'll see those cities. And there they are. I need to do an order by clause, or I actually need to select my table and do a sort on my table so I can sort by city on the table. As you can tell, it's not in order here. And maybe sort by state too. Make it a little clean up there. But now we can select multiple values. And the reason we can do that very easily is because, again, back at the beginning here, I did my in right here at the beginning. So I was able to do multi-value right away. If this said equal to at city, then it would have failed at that point because it would have compared the city name to, say Atlanta, comma, Orlando. And of course, there's no city with that name in my database. So by using the in clause, it works great. But that's only if you're embedding the query into your report. A lot of people don't like to use embedded queries. They like to use the queries that are in a stored procedure. So you can alter the stored procedures without having to alter your reports. Now, I will say this, though. In 2008 R2 now, you have shared data sets. And in my opinion, shared data sets are going to be a better option instead of using stored procedures. They're more flexible, you can move them around easier, and you can share them between reports easier. And you can also use that in clause, like I just showed you, without having to jump through hoops to get the stored procedure to work, which I'm about to show you how to do. But for those of you who are not on R2, then you're going to use the stored procedure for that. So let's open up a stored procedure query here. So this is the exact same report that I just showed you, except now, when I open up my data set, instead of using a query that I typed in this box below, I selected stored procedure, and I selected my stored procedure of address. And my address stored procedure has the exact same columns that I had before. So let's hit cancel here. Let's preview this report. And from the drop-down menu, I'm going to select just one city here. So I select Atlanta and view that report, and it works great. Let's go back to design. Let me open up city here, and I'm going to say allow multi-values now. Click on OK. Now let's preview this again, and I'm going to select a couple of cities here. And I say view report, and I get nothing back. So if I select one single city, it works great. But if I select more than one city, my report fails at that point. And that's because I'm using a stored procedure and I'm trying to pass it in using that same query, that in clause. Let's go take a look at that stored procedure and see exactly what it's doing. So here's my stored procedure, and you can see I have here the city is in at city there. That's exactly what I had in the query before in the other report. Can't do that. That is not an option. So I'm going to get rid of that. And down below here, I've got some extra code that I've typed in. And let's take a look at that. So I've got city now is in, and then I have this select statement here. I'm selecting some items from a function. And this function is a split function that takes the values and splits them up. So it takes my city values, in this case, say Atlanta, comma, Orlando, and it breaks it up, using the commas there, into a table. And now I'm selecting from that table. And this will work. Now you can say in and then have a table value here. So let's take a look at that split function. It's a table valued function. Again, it's available on bidn.com. If you're not familiar with bidn.com, I suggest you go check it out. It's a Business Intelligence Developers Network. And my blog's on there, along with a lot of other guys like Brian Knight, Devin Knight, Adam Jorgensen. They're all on there. And you'll see report parameters on there. A lot of our things I'm covering today are on my blog, and there's another one on there with that split function. So if you type in split in the search box on BIDN and scroll down a little bit, there's multi-value parameters from stored procedures and SSRS, and there you can download that split function. All right, so let's look at that split function and see exactly what it does. I'm going to modify here. Now, there are other methods out there besides just this one. This is one that I use. It seems to work well. I've had people out there do things like XML, things like that to make this work. But this one is pretty simple, and if you've only got a few items in your drop-down menu for your multi-select, this works great. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is I've got a function that I've created that's going to receive a list of all of the cities, and it's also going to receive a delimiter, in this case, comma. Now, if you're using it for just reporting, then you don't have to have a comma parameter here on your function. But I have a parameter delimiter on that because if I want to use this function for something else, let's say I'm passing in a value that's pipe delimited or semicolon delimited, I can use the same function to get a table out of that if I have it. So it's not just for parameters from reporting services. All right, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating a table. Oops, sorry about that. Let me do it one more time. There we go. So basically I'm creating a table here, and I'm inserting into that table the values of those items. And I'm returning that list. And so now when I come back here and I say city is in, and now I'm getting a list. So basically you can imagine this is a table with a list of all the cities that have been selected. So if I select 10 cities, I'll have 10 rows on that table with the name of each city. And let's go ahead and execute this. We'll alter the store procedure now to use that new code that I put inside of there. And it's commented out the old code there, the bad code. Let's go back to my report. We'll preview this now. And now I'm going to select 2 cities and view the report. And now it works. So I have Albany and Alhambra, and you can see those 2 cities are on my report now. So store procedures, again, you have to jump through a little bit of hoop there to get that to work. If I had used a shared data set instead in R2, I wouldn't have to do any of that stuff. It would work great, and these shared data sets are deployed out to reporting services manager, your report manager, and your report server, and you can share those between your reports, just like you can store procedures. All right, what else here? Cascading parameters is the next one. All right. So in this example here, I'm selecting city, and that's all I'm selecting. But let's say my end user wants to select something more. They want to select city, state, and zip code. And so they get some more detailed information. So they don't get a list of all the cities. So if they select something like, which one is it that has, one of them here has a ton of cities, a ton of them. There we go, Ballard here. Ballard's got a ton of options here. But let's say I only want to see a specific zip code or a specific area of that instead of the whole thing. We can do that. I've got another one here, another report I want to open up, and this one has a few parameters on it. So let's go ahead and preview this. So this one has a value of state I can select, it's got the value of city I can select, and it's got the value of zip code. So exact same report we saw before. I'm using these extra data sets here. Just either select distinct cities, order by city, select distinct states, and select distinct zip codes. That's all they are. Same thing I showed you before with the others with the city. And those 3 parameters also show up in my parameter folder up here. All right, so let's go ahead and preview this, and let's run this one time. I'm going to select the city here. Let's select the state of Florida, and I'll select the city of Atlanta, and that zip code right there looks good. And let's hit View Report, and I get no data back. Why is that? Well, of course, there's no city called Atlanta, named Atlanta, in the state of Florida, and that zip code there is somewhere up in the northeast. It's nowhere near Florida. So, not a good combination here. So my end users would have to know the zip code, and would have to know the city, and they'd have to parse through this entire list here to find the zip code that they want every time. So wouldn't it be nice if instead of doing that, we could say, if they select Florida, only show me the cities that are in Florida. And then from that, only show me the zip codes that are in that city. Now, side note, every time I do this session live, somebody in the audience goes, hey, but not all zip codes are in the same city. Sometimes they cross over, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I know that. That's not the point. The point is to show you cascading parameters. I understand that some cities and zip codes overlap, whatnot. So just put that out of your mind and just concentrate on the fact that we're trying to show you how to do cascading parameters. That's all. There's always one. All right, so let's go back and see how we do this. So our state, if we go and select states here, you can see that's just pulling in a list of states. I don't need to do anything with this because this is my highest level of my cascade here. So my first parameter doesn't need any special work done on its query. Next one is cities. Go to parameter cities. And I need to make one change to this. And you can see it right here. I need to say where the state is equal to @state in my city query. So basically you can think of it as the highest level parameter doesn't need any work. For the next one down, you need a where clause and say where whatever the item is equal to and the value in the state above, and the parameter above. So I'm going to go ahead and take out the comment section there and click on OK. So now this query is based on what item is selected from state. And the same thing for zip code. If I go to zip code now, I get the same thing here. So where city is equal to @city and state is equal to @state. So I've got to select a city and I've got to select a state before this query knows what to do because my where clause needs those 2 values. So we're going to go ahead and take out my comment section there. We'll click on OK. And let's preview this report again. And now you can see that it is grayed out. City is grayed out and zip code is grayed out. I can only select a state now. So I have to select a state before I can select a city or a zip code. So we'll select a state here. Let's select Florida again. And you'll notice that we don't see Atlanta in our list now. So I can select something like, say, Tampa. And for my zip codes, I only have one zip code for Tampa in my database. view report, and there is my one address that I have for Tampa in there. If I go back and I change my city, say I pick Orlando, you'll see the zip code wipes out. The zip code now knows that its list is not valid and it needs new values, and you have to reselect that. And now it shows my 4 addresses I have for Orlando. So now this is cascading from state to city to zip code for me. You can have this cascade down as many parameters as you want. If you've got 50 levels, you can do that. That would be quite a pain for your end users to have to pick through all those, but you can do that. All right, let's go back to design. I'm going to show you one more thing about cascading parameters. Over here on the left-hand side, where you've got city, state, and zip, the order of these parameters is important. So if I change the order of these by clicking on the little arrow up top here, say move down, move my state down. I can move it up and down with these arrows here. If I preview this now, you'll see I said my report has failed because there's a specific error. Go to the error list window to see that. And we go to my error list, and it says the report parameter city has a default value or valid value that depends on the report parameter state. Forward dependencies are not valid. When you see that message, forward dependencies are not valid, that's a telltale sign that you've got something out of order. In this case here, it's my state parameter needs to be at the top of the list. And there are my cities. And I have no cities in that state. So that state's on my database, but not any cities. A couple of them are like that. There we go. All right. So let's go back to my oh so awesome slideshow that I'm sure you guys love. All right. Next section here. We're going to talk about reporting from a cube and using parameters from that. And then we'll talk about some custom code and how you can alter your report. So parameters can be used from a cube, and they're actually very simple to select. A little tougher to get the available values, to get the default values to work, and I'll show you how to do that. Custom code is great. You can use that and reuse that code over and over again throughout your report. You can even share it across reports if you create your own custom DLLs. That's a little beyond the scope of this. We're not going to be showing custom DLLs, but we'll show some custom code in here. And parameters are not used just for selecting data. You can use your parameters to control the look and feel of your report, and I'll show you how to do that too. So speaking of cubes, Bill Gates has got a new toy he's come out with. I don't know if you've seen it. It's the invisible Rubik's Cube. There we go. All right, last bad joke, I promise. All right, let's go back to my project here, and let's open up my from a cube. All right, and my data set, I don't have any parameters on it. All right, let's preview this report, make sure it works first. All right, no issues here. And I got my, my drill throughs working, or drill downs working here. So, I guess I should mention this. So I've got these little pluses here I've created where you can drill through, or drill down to see the details under these groups here. And that's done with the grouping down below here. So groups, I can show you that in a second. So there's 2 items. There's drill through and there's drill down. Drill down is that little box right there. So if you see a little plus, that's a drill down. You're drilling down and seeing the information on the same screen. Drill through is what we did earlier, where we clicked on a report and it actually went through to another report. So if anybody ever mentions drill down or drill through, or if you happen to take the certification exam, make sure you know that. All right, let's go back to design. All right, I'm going to go open up my data set here. You'll notice when I open my data set now with a cube, I do not have the ability to type in this box here. It's all grayed out. This is MDX that has been put in this box. You don't have to know MDX to actually use a cube with your report. It actually will build it for you. If you click on Query Designer, on the left-hand side here are my measures. So I can select a specific measure group, and I can take these measures and I can drag them over and drop them into my item on the right-hand side, which I've already done. And you can see there's my business types, resellers, calendar year, semester, quarter, yada, yada, yada. All that information is now in my query, all flattened out. And the MDX that's being used to create this, I didn't have to write anything. All I had to do is just drag these items over and drop them into my section on the right-hand side here. If you want to see the MDX that's writing, you can click on this little design mode button up here, and there's the MDX that it's creating. The MDX it creates is really, really ugly, and it's one, hard to read, and 2, isn't the best MDX. So if you really want to get into MDX, I would suggest getting a couple of books on it. There's one called MDX Step by Step, which is great, and you'll learn how to come in here and make some changes to this to make this work a little better for you. Once you make a change to this, though, you can't go back to design mode. Any changes you made there. So once you go to design mode, you can't go back to the query mode here. Okay, so I want to create a parameter. That's what we're talking about today, parameters. How do I create a parameter on a report like this? Well, if we go into, let's see, this is using date, calendar, calendar year. Let's go to date, calendar, and there's calendar year right there. I want to make a parameter for calendar year. So I'm going to drag calendar year up and drop it into this top section up here. And you'll see over on the right-hand side here, I've got an option that says parameter. I can check that option. And that's it. Now I've got a parameter on my report. Pretty easy to do. Let's click on OK. Click on OK. And let's preview this. And we'll click on my drop-down menu. And there are my years. So I can select, say, 2005 and 2006. Already works for multi-value. View report. And there it is. So I didn't have to do anything extra here at all. I simply dragged up the year into the top section there. I put a check next to parameter, and that was it. It did the available values for me. It did the multi-value for me. I'm all set. The only thing it didn't do is the default value, which I can do also. So let's go to measures here, and let's see, where's that data set coming from? I have a list of years there, but you see I've only got one data set. I should have another data set down here with those values. Well, it is there. It's just hidden. So we need to right-click on data sets and go to show hidden data sets. And then below that now you can see my date, calendar year. So this is the data set that gives me that drop-down menu with 2005, 2006, et cetera, that we saw there. So let's open that up. Let's see exactly what we're getting back from this. Again, so MDX has been created for me. I didn't have to do anything. Let's go to Query Designer. I'm going to run this query. And let's take a look and see what we get back here. So this is my query. I got a year, I got a caption, I got a value, and there's a level. So if you have multiple levels in your hierarchy, it would show 1, 2, and 3 for those levels. But here's the value right here. So remember earlier I said that sometimes your value will be different than your label, and that's exactly what we see here. So that my value being passed into the MDX query is going to be date.calendaryear.allperiods or date.calendaryear.ampersand 2005. But my end users are going to see the caption over here. They're going to see the CY 2005, 2006, et cetera, et cetera. They're not going to see the actual value there, which is a good thing. We don't want them to see that value. That would confuse them. They wouldn't understand what that meant. All right, let's hit OK here. Let's cancel this. And let's cancel this. And let's go to my parameter. Let's see what we have in my parameter up here. Parameter properties, available values, and you see it's already filled in for me. Get values from a query. It selected that data set that was hidden. The value is being passed in the value field, and the caption is being passed into the label field. So that's what my end users will see, is that label. And this works perfectly if you're doing simple things like this. But what if we want to do something a little more complex? Like, let's say my default value here, I want to specify a value. Now you can put a filter on this. If you go back to the data set, go to Query Designer. And up top here is a filter expression right here, and we can actually select a certain year here if we want to filter by that, and that will give us a default value. But if you're doing things like date, it doesn't make much sense to come in here and check these boxes off. So let's say I come in here and I check 2007 or 2011 if the year it is now. Well, next year, January 1st, I'd have to come in here and change my report. If I've got dozens of reports using this, I could have a dozen reports I'd have to come in here and change. So checking the box here for a default value for date doesn't really make sense sometimes. So we'll get rid of this. Cancel that. Let's go back to my report here. So I need to set in a date using an expression. So we're going to use the expression language in reporting services to do this. So I'm going to say specify a value. We're not going to get it from a query. This is the default value of my parameter now. We're going to add this in, and I'm going to click on the effects box here, and I'm going to pass in some expressions here. Down below here are these expressions. You'll see here's my date time expressions. I'm going to use the year function here, which is going to give me the year. I'm going to use my today function, which gives me today's date. So I can put in year, today, and that's going to give me today's date. It's going to give me the year for today. You can ignore the little red squiggly there. That's asking for some sort of scope. We don't need to scope it to anything because we want just today's date out of that. So that gives me the year. But this is not going to give me a good value here. And let's go run this report and see what happens when I do. You see I do not have a default value. Nothing got selected here. And the reason for that is the value is what you need to pass in, not the caption. So if I go back and run my query down below here, these values right here, this is what you've got to pass in. I've got to pass in something like this to show this. So I need to have date, dot calendar year, dot ampersand, and then the date, then the year there to make this work. The ampersand means it's a key. So my key value is going to be the year, my number for my year. So I need to pass that in. So we're going to do date, dot calendar year, and then the date. So let's go back here. Date parameter here. Default values. Go to my expression, and I need to type in date. Oops, I need to square bracket there at the beginning. Date dot calendar year ampersand. And let's say square bracket. Just close it off there. Plus. And then at the end I need another plus here. And close off my square bracket. Still not done yet though. So this year right here is actually an integer. So I can't add that integer to the string. If I try to do that and I run this report, I should get an error message here that says default value expression for the report parameter date calendar contains an error. Input string was not in the correct format. So I guess I'm wrong with my default value here. And it's pretty obvious that it is adding a string to an integer, which you can't do. So I need to cast this as a string. You can do that with CSTR. So cast string, basically. There we go. That'll give me the year. Let's click on OK. OK. Preview this again. Still not getting a value back. And the reason for that is I don't have 2011 in my available list here. So I need to do something else, like 2010. So I'm going to go back to my parameter here, and I'm just going to subtract 1 from my year here to make that work. So let's say year minus 1. If you want the current year and you have that in your database, then you wouldn't have to do that, of course. And there we go. 2010 has been selected. Now, I don't have any data for 2010, but it did work. If I wanted to, I could subtract a couple more years. Let's say, subtract 3, because I think I have 2008 data in there. And preview that. And there it is. So there's my data for 2008. All right. So let's go back out of here. And let's see what else to cover next. Custom code is next. All right. So that's how you do, one more thing on parameters I want to show you. So in the drop-down menu here, there is this option for all periods, and a lot of times people say, I don't want that all periods in there. I don't want my end user to be able to select that. They need to select specific years here. So we can change that. If we go into our hidden data set we have here, go to data set properties, click on designer, and we can change our query. There's just one place you have to change it. Right here it says dot all members. You need to take out the dot all members, because all members gives you that all level, and put in the word children instead. And if I spell children, there we go. So you just want to change it from dot all members to dot children on your MDX. This is what that hidden data set that's bringing back a list of all my years. We can execute this now, and now you can see that all member is gone from my drop-down menu here. Click on OK, click on OK, and on my report now, I won't see that in the drop-down menu. And now my all periods is gone, which is exactly what I want. I just want the year showing. Keep in mind, though, that if you do make that change, and then you go back into your measures here, and you make some changes to your query, and you save this again, it's going to overwrite that parameter query there. If you made any change, if you made significant changes, it'll overwrite that parameter, and you'll lose that change. So keep that in mind. Any customizations you make can be lost if you go back in there and rerun that wizard. If you go back in there and you go to Query Designer and you go to Design Mode and make the changes here, I don't believe it will override. I believe it keeps it like it is if you change it here. All right, so that's it for the cube. Next, we're going to talk about custom code. So another data set here I have just showing some prices. Let's go ahead and preview this and see what I have. And there are my prices. You see they're coming up in red, but not all of them are coming up in red. Now you could use an expression to do this. But I didn't use an expression. I used some custom code. And the reason for that is I want to use this code on multiple columns. So let's say I have 50 columns all showing, say sales for different stores or different dates or whatnot, and I want the formatting to be the same on each column. Well, if I went to those columns, if I go back to design here, if I went to the columns themselves and went to my text box, if I went to my text box here and go to properties on the right hand side, and I made the change over here, say the background color or something over here, by going in and altering the expressions. If I can get my screen to show it here. There we go. And I'll alter the expression here. I would need to copy that expression over and over and over again for each one of those items. And if I wanted to make a change, then I have to make a change to every single one of those columns. So instead of doing that, I want to go up here to the top and go to my custom code option. So to do that, you just simply click somewhere in the background of your report to get the report option in your text toolbox up here. And you go to report, report properties, click on code, and there's a custom code I've written. Now this is in VB. This is just some VB script here. That's all you can use, and they don't have the ability to use C# yet. So I'm just using some VB script here. It's real simple. Just all you need to learn is a couple of things to make this happen. You got to put in the word function first. Give your function a name, and then you need to pass in your parameters, your values that you're going to be passing into this. So by val is just the keyword you have to use. There's also another one called by reference. But we're going to use by val here. Give it a name. I call it price, and then what is the type? What type of is it integer, double, or string, or what is it? After that, the rest of the code here is just simple if-then statements. If price is less than 10, then return red. If price is greater than 50, then return green, else black, etc., etc. So I'm passing in a color. I'm returning a color there, and then I just end my function. So I end my if and end my function. And like I said, all this code here is available on my blog on bidn.com. All right, so let's hit cancel there. And let's go back to preview this again. So you can see I've got my values there. So if it's above 10, it changes to black instead of red. And if it gets high enough, I think it was 50, you see it turns green. That works great. So this is one of those options where if you've got a column that you need to change, then this works great. But what if your end users say, I like this color on here, this is wonderful, but when I go to print the report up, these colors come out really funky, or they just don't show up very good at all because I get this black and white printer and it just doesn't print well. So I need two reports. I need one with color and one without color. Au contraire, mon frère, you don't need two reports. You just need a report with a parameter on it. So parameters can be used for other things besides just querying data. They can be used to control your report. So I want to have the option to make my report basically a black and white report instead of having color on my numbers here. So my end users can change it to black and white and then print the report in black and white mode instead of printing it in color mode. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to design here, and I'm going to create a parameter. Now I'm not going back to my data set, my prices data set, and adding anything in there because I'm not using a parameter to query data or to filter data. I'm going to use a parameter to alter the report. So I'm going to go up here and right click, add a parameter. I'll give it a name. This is actually the name for the code in the background. It's not what the end user sees. The end user is going to see the prompt. So for the name, I'm going to put in color mode. And then for my prompt, I'll say select color mode. And I'm going to make this a Boolean, so it's going to be simply a true or false. Go to my available values. I'm going to specify some values here. I'm going to add a couple values. And I'll say the first one is going to be black and white. And the value will be true. And then my next one will say color. And the value for that will be false. So if they select color, they're going to get the false section. If they select true, if they select black and white, they're going to get the true part of my query. And for default, I'm going to go ahead and default that to, we'll default it to false. There we go. And let's click on OK. And I can preview the report. Nothing's changed on the report now. I do have a parameter, but it doesn't do anything yet. If I view the report, nothing's changed. So let's go back here, and let's take a look at my code here. Now, I wrote that custom code up there I showed you. To get that code to work in the actual box here, we go over here to my color option. I click on expressions here, and we simply put in code dot and the name of the function. I called that function get color, and then I pass in the value of that price that I want to pass up to it. So in this case, it's list price. On my next box over, I'm doing code get color, but I'm passing in the standard cost. I think is the other column there. Yeah, standard cost. All right, so this is going to give me back my color. So to return a color for this color option here. But I've got a parameter now that I can use to decide whether I want to get this color or not. So I've got parameters down here, and there's my color mode parameter. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little easier. I'm going to hit enter here, and I'll add my color mode up here. And I'm going to do an immediate if. So I'm going to say if. So if my color mode, and I'll put a comma. Now my true part. My true was black and white, right? So if it's true, and you see it's highlighted, you see it bolds out the true part as object there. So the IntelliSense built in here does help you building these. So if my parameter is true, and I don't need to say equal to true because the value is either true or false. It's a Boolean. So I say if true, then I want the text to be black. False, then I'm going to use this custom code below here. And I simply need to end my immediate if with another parentheses there. And that's all there is to it. So now I'm saying if my color mode is equal to true, make it black. If it's false, then go get that color list for me, or the color value back. If you're not sure what colors you can select from, there's a constant list over here. If you click on constants on one of the color fields, it'll give you a list of all the colors you can select from. And you can click on these. It'll add those colors up there like red. You can double click on something else here and add sea green. You can click on more colors, and this gives you a list of all the colors that you can choose from here. One little tip for you, I tried using this light gray one time. It is actually misspelled. Everything else is G-R-A-Y, but if you use this, it will not work. You have to actually type in G-R-E-Y for light gray. Just light gray. Everything else works great. Found that out the hard way. All right. Let's click on OK. I'm going to do the same thing for standard cost here. I'm going to go over that expression, grab that expression off the color. And there's my custom code there, code, get color, but I'm passing in standard cost instead of the list price in this box. And then we'll do immediate if. Again, grab my parameter down here, put that in. If it's true, then I want the text to be black. Else it's going to be whatever color is returned from my value. We'll click on OK. All right, let's preview this. All right, the default mode is color. Let's change it to black and white, and let's see what happens with our text here. And there we go. It turns black on us, which is great. So now our end user can print this up, and it'll turn out nice and neat for us. It will not have all those colors on that for us. We could even do the same thing for like this background text here. So the background is light blue. I could put an if statement on that also, doing the exact same thing. If it's true, then make the background white, or some other light color that will show up better in my printer if this one doesn't work. You can also hide columns on your report too. So let's say my standard cost here, for some reason some of my end users, they don't want to see that on their report. They want to be able to hide that because that's not something they want to look at. So we can right click on a column, go to column visibility, and we can hide or show based on an expression. And this expression can be a parameter. So if I cancel this, we'll create one more parameter to do that. We'll right click, add parameter, and we'll call this hide cost. And we'll say prompt will be hide standard. We'll say hide / show standard cost, something like that. So our end users will know exactly what they're selecting here. Again, I'll make this a Boolean, so it's simply going to be true or false. Available values will be true and false. So I'll make one as show, and we'll make that false. And one is hide, and we'll make that true. Now, I know it sounds backwards. You think show would be true and hide would be false, but the property of that field is called hidden. So if it's hidden, it's set to true. So if it's shown, then it's set to false. So the property is hidden. The property is not visible. And we're going to get a value here. We'll go ahead and set it to false, so it should show it. Click on OK. Right click on this, column visibility, show or hide based on an expression, and we'll select our parameter, our hide cost. There we go. Okay, that should be all we need to do. Let's preview this. And now it's set to show right now. I can set it to hide, view the report, and standard cost disappears. So you could do this for multiple items on your report. You can do it for multiple columns. I actually have a blog on BIDN where I show a drop-down menu here. Instead of just hide or show, is actually a drop-down list here of, oops, let me clear that off, like this, and it's got all these little text box here, so you can select which columns you want to see. So if you've got 20 columns on your report, the end user can come in here and actually select the columns that they want to see on their report, and then view it, and it'll show just those columns. So if you got those end users that are saying, hey, I really like that report you have out there, but I need to just make one little change to it. I need the exact same report, but just take off these 2 columns. And then another user comes up and says the same thing, oh, I need that same report, but just take off this other column, and so on and so forth. No more having to create that report over and over again and maintain 20 different versions of a report. Now you can just put on a drop-down menu here with a list of your columns and have them select the columns they want. This is a manual build. It doesn't. It's not something you can actually say for each column and have it created itself. That would be nice. I wish it did have that, but there's no option for that. So you would have to actually manually create this list of columns and manually create the little checkboxes there by selecting multi-value. And again, on bidn.com, I have if you do a search for report columns or something like that, it'll come up inside of here. All right. And that is the end of my show. Let's go back to my oh-so-awesome slideshow. All right, so again, my blog is on bidn.com/blog/Mike Davis. And you can also email me. It's mdavis@pragmaticworks.com if you have any questions. You can also follow me on Twitter, too, and if you're a tweeter. And that's about it. Rachel, did you want to take over some questions now?
Sure, yeah, we have quite a few. We have 2 regarding the changes in Oracle queries. Stephen would like to know, in Oracle queries, they changed the @ sign to a colon. Can you use that in this? And instead of having @city, can you have :city?
Okay, that's a great question. So let's go back to my report here. And I'm going to look at my data sets here. So when you are creating a report, I'm trying to get to go to meeting out of the way here. You're creating a report, and you pick a data source up here, the drop-down menu. Here's your choices for your drop-down menu. Oracle is one of those choices here for one of your data sources. Whatever code you type in Oracle is the same code you're going to type in here. So it's whatever the native code is. I'm using SQL Server, so T-SQL is what I'm using. If you select Oracle, then whatever the Oracle code is. I am not an Oracle guru by any means, but if he's saying that they've changed the code to use a different syntax, then whatever the Oracle syntax is what you would use for those queries.
Okay, great. We have another question from Barbara. She would just like to know what biz version are you using. Is it 2008 or is it 2008 R2?
I'm using 2008 R2, but most of everything I showed today should work in 2008 and in 2005, except for the couple of times I mentioned it during the session. They were different.
Okay, another question we have is a request for an example. Can you illustrate how a multi-value city parameter might work?
A multi-value city parameter, I think I showed that earlier, I believe.
Maybe they missed it, but this session has been recorded, so in case you missed any part of it, you can always go to our website. It should be posted by the end of the week. It's at pragmaticworks.com under past webinars. So.
Yeah, he may have typed that question in really early in the session.
It was early. Okay. So we have another question from Wayne. Could I default to all on cascading parameters? I know it does not make sense in this example, but in other scenarios, this could be something I would use.
Yep, you sure can. To default to all values, you want to go back to your option here and say get values from a query, and just simply select that data set and select the entire data set, and it should pass in all the values in that data set into your query. I haven't tested that on this report. Let me make sure that works there. Yeah, it does. See? So now all of my cities are selected, and if I go back to my option here, so for default values, I simply selected the data set under default values here, and I selected the value field, and so it passes in the entire data set into your query, and so now I get all of my items back.
Okay, great. Another question is, how do you pass multi-value and drill through report using stored proc?
Multi-value and drill through, okay. So a couple parts to that question. So the drill through we did earlier, drill down here. So if we go to our properties, this text box here, and go to actions. So if you have multiple parameters, I think that's what he's asking. If you have multiple parameters, they'll all show up in this drop in the menus here. So I just selected one and then put one city in here. If you have more than one, you'll click add, and then in the drop-down menu you'll see those other parameters here. I only have one on this report, so I want to pass it back in one. If they passed in more than one value and you're using a stored procedure, then you're going to have to use that split function I showed earlier.
Okay, great. We have another question about bids. Is it available for Visual Studio 2010, working with SQL 2008 R2?
No, it is not. They did not bump it up to 2010 yet, but in Denali it will be, though. The new versions that are coming out at the end of this year or beginning of next year it'll be using 2010.
Okay, great. Jorge would like to know, could you show us MDX cascading parameters?
Oh, that is automatic, actually. Go back to my query from the cube. That is actually automatic. There's nothing much to show there. So if you go into our options here, I've selected year. If I drag up something else, like, say, product category or something like that, it automatically makes those cascading. So I have to select my year before I can select the category and so on and so forth.
Okay, they're also saying that they're having a little bit of difficulty hearing you, Mike, so I'm not sure if maybe their microphone's just cutting in and out a little bit, but several people have said that it's a little difficult hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me okay, Rachel?
I can hear you perfectly, yeah. So it might be, if you're having difficulties hearing Mike, you might want to check the audio on your end, and we'll just try to speak up.
Yeah, a lot of times it's a network latency issue. Stop surfing YouTube while you're watching me, and it won't happen.
Exactly. There might be a slight delay, but trust me, Mike will repeat himself.
It could be the network latency on my end too. It could be breaking up sometimes. I apologize for that.
Okay, great. So we'll get to a few more questions. Well, yes, I know that I'm louder than Mike, but that's just our personalities. So.
I wasn't going to say that.
Okay, Barbara would also like you to repeat your email address, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. mdavis@pragmaticworks.com. I'll type on it.
Okay, great. We have another question from Lee. What if he wants 10 out of 40 cities as the default?
Sorry, what was the question again?
What if Lee would like to know, what if he wants 10 out of 40 cities as the default?
Okay, then you would have to type in those 10 cities with comma separated between them. So Orlando, comma, Atlanta, comma, yada, 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 with spaces also in the list. If you wanted to come from a query, then you need to simply do select top 10 or whatever it is as a query and use that as your default. Just like earlier I showed using a query, it pulls back all the cities. I could create a new query that just does top 10 cities or something like that and use that as my default.
Okay, great. I think we have time for only a couple more questions. Yomi would like to know, where do you embed the report code on the report?
Where do you embed the report code? All right, let's talk about custom code up here. Right, here we go to code. This is you go to report up here, click on report properties, and then in a code box here is where you're actually going to embed the code. You do have other options here. You can go to references here, and you can actually add in your own assembly. So if you created your own custom DLLs, you can actually add those in here and use those. That's a little beyond the scope of what we're covering today, but you can do that separately.
Okay, great. Another question we have is, can you send the same report with different parameter values through report subscription?
Yes, with a data-driven subscription, you can do that. A data-driven subscription uses a query to pass in values to the parameters. So let's say you have a report that has a list of employees on it, and you want to send that report to each employee, but just showing their information. You simply select a distinct list of all your employees from your data and pass it into your data-driven subscription, and you'll get one report for each employee, and you can even schedule that to go to different boxes or different shared locations also.
Okay, great. We have a... Oh, go ahead.
I do another session on reporting services administration, and I cover that in there.
Oh, something to look forward to, everyone. I'm definitely going to try to get Mike to do another webinar. So.
Anything for you, Rachel.
Oh. We have a question from Bobby. He was just requesting if you could display your Twitter account again. I think he's got a fan. There we go. And then we have another question. How can we hide a table based on the table contents, such as hiding if empty and not based on a parameter?
How can we hide a table based on the table contents? That's a good question. So what I would do then is have to go to the table. When she says table, I assume she's talking about, like, right, go up here and go to tables properties. And there's a visibility property right here. So we can hide or show based on an expression. And I would use some sort of either data set or parameter, probably data set here. Yeah, okay. So what I would do is I would create a data set, and I would say select, count star from wherever I'm getting my data from, with whatever where clauses I have or whatnot, or parameters. So I'd get a count. And then back here on my tables properties for visibility, I would say show or hide based on expression, and I would say if, and then grab that data set that's coming back, which would be something like whatever the first number is. If that number is equal to 0, then true, else false. Like that.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Okay, great. I know a lot of people are still having problems hearing. This session has been recorded, so if you're missing anything right now, this session will be posted on our website under past webinars by the end of this week, so feel free to watch it as many times as you need to try to catch up on everything you might be missing right now. And with that, I think we're going to do our last question for today. When would you use a shared data set?
Oh, okay. To tell you the truth, I would use shared data sets always because it's much easier to open it up and alter a shared data set than it is to open up the whole report. Again, it's a little beyond the scope of what we covered today, but if I open up my report manager, which, by the way, this takes a little while to open, so it may not open in time for us to show it today, but if you want to alter a data set, there's the shared data set folder now in R2 out on the report server. And you can open those up and alter the query. If you've got, say you got a select distinct list of cities, and you've got 7 or 8 reports that are all using that city drop-down list for their parameter. You could open up that shared data set and maybe add a where clause to it or something like that, and then all the reports that use that would then be updated. You would have to go alter each individual report. So here's my share. We share data sets here, and here's my data set. So I can actually open these up, and I can alter these. Go back. I'm going to edit in Report Builder here, which I'm not going to do that because it takes a while for Report Builder to come up. And I can edit that data set now and make changes to it. And I'll update it here, save it. I can also do it in bids too. We've got a shared data set over here. I'm going to take this data set here and convert to a shared data set, and I'll show you. I'm going to right click on this and deploy this back out there. So if I made a change to this data set now, I can simply deploy it back out there and it'll override it, and then all the reports that are using it are going to be updated. If only one report's using it, fine. You updated that one report. But I like to use shared data sets for just about every report, just in case I decide to use that same data set for another report in the future.
Okay, great. I know we didn't get a chance to get to everyone's questions today, but as Mike said earlier, you can definitely message him at email or Twitter or via IDN, and I'm sure he'll respond. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for our free training session, and thank you, Mike, for a great session.
Yeah, if you have any more questions, the best thing to do is post them on the forums on BIDN. Most likely I'm going to answer it there anyway, but that way other people can learn from your questions too.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.